Hi everyone. Today I am taking out Eco Club and we are going to be at 5D Ranch, is where I'm at now. And I'm gonna try camping a little bit differently than I normally do. I'm gonna work on tarp camping. So I'm gonna build a little shelter and see how that goes tonight. It's gonna get around 40 degrees tonight, I think. So hopefully the tarp will make it a lot warmer, but I picked out my area. And one of the things I first checked when I first got here was see which way the wind's blowing, because we're gonna get some nice little gust today, so that I can put the low end of the tent to block most of the wind. I say tent, I'm hopefully gonna make a tent out of this thing. Never done this before. A buddy of mine, David, did, and it looked pretty nice. So I'm gonna try a few different configurations, so hopefully this will turn out kind of nice. So I'll give you a layout here of the point that I've picked, the spot that I've picked. And so I've got a couple of trees to choose from here to be my tie-on for my entrance area, and then kind of a nice cushy pine needle ground. But I've got to do a little prep work. There's a lot of sticks here. So that's what I'm about to do now, is clean this up a little bit more. So let me do that, and then we'll come back and start putting up the tent. All right, so here's what I've got so far. I've got it up in the shape that I finally wanted it. It's been a little tricky though, as I'll explain kind of how I got this set up. So what I essentially did was starting at the front. Now let me explain. This is an 8x10 tent. So I'm going long ways 10, 8, left, right. So I started with the middle grommet on my tarp, and then I tied a V off of that. So you can see back here I've got a left-hand side, right-hand side, and then of course the middle. And so instead of just doing a normal ridge line down the middle, I wanted a little bit more area, and so I spread it out using my line for kind of a tension to help hold that up. What I did was I secured that line down to my stakes, and I used I guess it's like a taut or a hitch taut line. I don't know what that was either, so I had to look it up. I won't tell anybody if you don't. And so I knew there was a tension line to tie, I just didn't know how to do it. So I tied those. And so I end up with this really nice shape. I'll show you the insides. Got a little bit of a door here. If we just kind of zoom this back out. Oh, wrong way. If we zoom this out, we'll see. I can somewhat close it off, but that's okay. I'm not worried about that because I oriented it so that it's blocking all the wind coming from that direction. So you can see inside is actually pretty spacious. I've got my inside bottom tarp that I'm gonna put in here in a minute. The other thing that I'm gonna do is, if I was really concerned about rain, which I'm not tonight, the flaps out to the side, I'm gonna go ahead and do this tonight, I'm gonna roll them underneath and tuck them so that I get a nice crisp line from that stake all the way to this one. And so, one, that's also gonna help me with anything getting underneath, like maybe some wind, or if it was raining, that would help a little bit with water, depending on how the water would run off the ground, of course. So it's actually quite spacious in there. I'm pretty pleased with this. This is the first time, by the way, that I've tried anything like this, just using a simple tarp to make a tent. And so I'm gonna try it out tonight, and I will let you guys know how it goes. I'll get some more video once I get it all nice and tidied up as well. All right, guys, and here we are. This is the place for the night. Okay, got my nice little tarp in there. Nice and roomy. Got a door or two that can, again, somewhat close. You can see that I've got the edges tucked underneath. Okay, got everything nice tucked away. And I will mention this. When you get these tarps, if you'll notice, I kind of have a wrinkle here. Why is that? Well, I started looking at it, and I realized the grommets are not exactly the same distance from each other. And so with some of these little cheap tarps, understand that your grommets are not gonna form unless you get a super duper excellent made tarp. You're not gonna get those exact dimensions for your grommets. Now, of course, you don't have to use grommets. If you have your little clips, which I do have, You can totally clip it exactly where you need it to be and call it good, but I'm not going to worry about that. This is perfectly fine for tonight. I'm expecting to trap a lot of heat in here. As I mentioned, it's going to be pretty cold, so I think I'll be just fine. I might even have to open the doors tonight. All right, gang. Well, this is it. This is our little hobbit hole for the night. And I will give you a review back in the morning if I'm not frozen or eaten by the chupacabra. One of the two. All right. Neither one sound good. See you in the morning. All right, everyone, good morning. I survived the night. I did stay in the tarp tent all night, by the way. I know you see my truck back there. I'm really roughing it. But no, I stayed in here the whole night. Actually pretty nice and toasty. Let me give you a quick rundown. I didn't have any failures of anything. Wind dropped down, so that was really nice. I was able to close these doors off completely, but nice and toasty, I will say that. A few things, though, that I wanted to comment on these shelters and stuff just from experience, and I'm sure other people out there have much more to add than myself. But one thing, of course, is when using a tarp, especially if you're going to be in rainfall, you got to be careful about your seams. So you might have noticed that I flipped this inside out, and so I've got the little seam here. I probably wouldn't have done that if it was going to rain, because I would worry about these seams maybe catching, even though these are heat sealed. I would worry about it maybe catching or causing a water to run off in some direction that I wouldn't want. And so I'd actually flip this out so it's a little bit more of a smooth runoff. But other than that, in terms of the shape and everything, it turned out actually really nice. Very good for deflection of wind, because we did get some gusts before I went to bed, and everything held up just fine. The second thing is, with any tent, any type of camping, especially whenever you're tent camping, when the weather changes, like the temperatures, condensation. I did get some condensation on the inside, not a ton, but I can still feel it here. Anytime you're in a tent, you're exhaling moisture. And to top it off, I'm sitting on ground that also contains a lot of moisture. If you pull back these needles, you'll see the ground is actually still very damp. We had a rainfall here a couple days ago. And so adding with that, even though I have a ground tarp to kind of prevent some of that, it's not all covered back in there. And so you breathing and all that, you will get some condensation. Now, the way to alleviate that, as most people know, is you create ventilation. You get movement of air through your tent area to kind of keep the moisture out. Because the science behind this is, if you're inside here, which again I was creating heat inside, and so warm air can hold a lot more moisture than cooler air. And so what was happening is the same thing that happens whenever you bring a cold beverage outside, and that is warm, moist air is touching something that's much cooler, and that causes that warmer air to cool down, and it loses its ability to hold all of that moisture. And so it forms this condensation on the inside of your tent. Different tents have different, or rather, I don't want to say tents, different fabrics have different ways of dealing with that. I know there's 2-ply tents what are they called? Inner wall and outer wall tents and stuff like that. But with tarps, it's just a big piece of plastic. So I opted to try to keep in the heat rather than worry about condensation. And I was very surprised because this morning I had these two little panels closed off pretty well. I used my little binder clip to clip it off. And I could feel a little bit of, literally just kind of the cool kind of seeping in a little bit. But when I opened the doors this morning to make coffee, it was like a blast of cold air just rolled in here. It was actually kind of surprising how much heat I had trapped in here. But be on the lookout for that. But I'll choose the heat over the condensation because it wasn't nearly that bad. I suspect it would probably be even worse if it was cold and rainy. You'd get way more moisture built up in here, so that could be a little bit tricky. But yeah, so overall, pretty pleased with the setup. You know, I enjoy tent camping, but hammock camping I think is my favorite because it's so easy and I sleep really well and it's nice and comfy for me. All right, guys. Well, I survived the night. Nothing came and ate me. The coyotes lit up last night like crazy. They were everywhere around us. That was really, really cool. So if you get a chance, get outdoors, enjoy the time out there, and we'll see you next time.